Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the AgView Pitch. Today, we're going to talk grain handling and specifically running grain dryers. And so today I have with me Matt Todd with the Grain Handler. How's it going today, Matt?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. So today we did the fun part, right? So we were working on my family's grain dryer. You were here kind of scoping things out. And kind of what I want to do in this conversation is just to talk a little bit about some of the do's and don'ts with grain systems, with grain dryers in particular. We're getting to that time of year as we record this. I know some guys in the South are already rolling. They're already harvesting and drying grain, I suspect. And we're getting to that area now where we're going to be doing that. You guys are based out of Minnesota. Talk a little bit about Grain Handler real quick.
Well, our company has been manufacturing grain dryers and grain handling equipment for 35 years. A Grain Handler. We have two facilities. Our main manufacturing facility is in Lakeville, Minnesota. And then we have another facility in St. Charles, Minnesota, which is where the company actually originated. And then in the Minneapolis area, and then now in Lakeville. But we basically have been one of the originators in the States as far as the mixed flow dryer, which is really popular now. A lot of the larger manufacturers have kind of adopted that philosophy of drying and produced some other dryers in that regard. I mean, our main focus is on grain quality and that's where the mixed flow dryer has always been the best.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that a little bit and keep talking directly into the mic so everybody can hear you good. So what I want to ask you is a couple of key things to start with. You know, as we talk about sort of the do's and don'ts of grain drying. First of all, so we just spent, and you just spent a couple of hours like kind of going through our dryer, right? What are some of the key things if, a lot of times the dryer sits there all year, nobody touches it, nothing, and then all of a sudden you go get to it and it's like, okay, we got to get this thing ready. What do we need to do? What are some of the key things that guys need to be paying attention to in the grain dryer?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is to do what we did before harvest, is not to wait, not to, you go in, you check your, operate the dryer, make sure the fans are operating, make sure your gas is coming in, make sure that your componentry is working. Make sure your unloads aren't plugged. And then, on the backside
with like a raccoon or something,
raccoons or just debris or, leftover grain that was in the thing, it'll definitely clog things up, and then it'll cause problems once you fill the dryer. So to get that stuff cleaned out and ready for harvest, ready for when you have corn to put in the dryer, you don't have an issue then. The biggest thing that we like to talk about is just, your dryer only runs for a month and a half, 2 months out of the year. Mm-hmm. It's got to run during that time. So to do a little bit of pre-season, pre-checks and things like that is so important.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, once you've done that and harvest begins, one of the things that I've noticed that is a real plus with the mixed flow dryer, and I really love the Grain Handler. I guess that's my commercial for Grain Handler, but is how the grain quality is so good coming out of our dryer. It's just amazing in terms of, being able to improve test weight and stuff. And so what I want to do is get to a couple of specific questions on just temperature management. So from your perspective as a grain dryer expert, is there kind of a key temperature that you guys look at that say, if you want to make sure that you've got the best quality, is it 240 or is it or is it 175 or something, and what are the things that depend?
And if you look at, every manufacturer of grain dryers, they all have a capacity chart on their literature, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
which is usually not right.
Correct. And because it's all done on a computer, it's not real, it's not been done in every area of farming is done in a different humidity, different temperature, different, different things. So that's done on a computer in perfect conditions, 70 degrees, 0% humidity. Boom, we can dry corn all day. But the key is to look at those capacity charts, and those capacity charts are majority of done at a 225 degree plenum temp. And that gives you the most, it's hot, but it gives you the most. In a mixed flow dryer, in a grain handler dryer, and I can't speak intelligently about other manufacturers of mixed flow, but our dryer, it's perfectly fine to dry at that higher temperature. You're not going to really jeopardize grain quality, but you do burn more fuel, at a higher temperature, depending upon,
you have more capacity, but you're burning more fuel.
Correct.
So you're going to get balanced.
What I've seen, with customers I've talked to and different things that they say, in that, 190 to 210 range is probably you get the best bang for your buck. You get the most grain, best quality, you get the most throughput, and you're burning the least amount of fuel, which with, comparing the mixed flow dryer to a cross flow dryer, which would be any screen dryer that you would see, you're going to have better efficiency. You're going to burn less fuel because we're blowing less air over that burner. By only blowing 40 CFM over a burner where anywhere from 80 to 120 CFM through a mixed flow or a cross flow dryer, you're going to burn more fuel. And that's where the efficiency comes in. That's where, the mixed flow market has really taken off, is because of that, the efficiency you can get out of a mixed flow versus a cross flow dryer.
I know a lot of people that like to dry, harvest early, pick corn at a higher moisture, and run the grain dryer will argue that, I like drying corn when it's 80 degrees out because the dryer is more efficient when it's 80 degrees out. Is that a fact?
Well, that just makes sense because you got to heat air temperature from 80 to whatever you're drying at. So if it's warm
versus 40.
So yeah, you're going to get, it's going to
get 40 degrees of free gas.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the exact point. But then with most of those people that are drying at 80 degrees, your humidity is high. Well, humidity is moist air. So you got to take that moisture out of the air before it's actually getting anything done. And that's why, a lot of people come and talk to me about, oh, do you do heat reclaim and all this stuff in our dryer? Well, we cool with ambient air and we don't do any heat reclaim because
you're bringing a lot of moisture back in.
You have to take that moisture out of that air before it does anything. Yeah, you might pick up a little bit of inefficiency, but you're losing in capacity. So what are we trying to get done? We're trying to dry corn. So you can get more corn dried with just using ambient air than reclaiming that heat moisture, moisture in gauge air. So it's yes, in perfect conditions, every dryer is great, but.
So from an efficiency standpoint, what do you recommend? Let's take a farmer that's got 2,000 acres of corn. Let's say, they're going to dry their entire crop. Are there certain sizes that you guys recommend? Should you be able to dry how many bushels per hour is kind of like what you look for? Or is there like a size that makes the most sense, or does it depend on a lot of
when I'm talking to potential customers, I always say, what do you have for wet storage? Because, you want to basically be able to dry that wet storage that you have in that day. And then to have a little bit left and you can get going in the combine early.
So the dryer doesn't shut off.
The dryer's never shutting off.
Right.
Because, or if it does, most of our dryer always shuts off when the wet bin's empty. But if you have a large wet bin and you just keep running and then you're dumping trucks all day long. And then when in the evening, you're pulling out of that wet bin. Well, that's great, but not everybody has a 30,000 bushel wet bin. Maybe you have a 10,000 bushel wet bin. So if you got a 10,000 bushel wet bin, okay, well then we can size your dryer to be able to make sure that you can keep up with your wet storage and your throughput during the day that you're drying. And not everybody in this day and age wants to combine corn 24 hours a day. They want to have a life and manage their life during harvest and
right.
And, just pick corn during the 12 hours that the sun's shining and then get a good, decent night's sleep. And then in the morning, they can get back on it. And I think that's important to a lot of people. But, the size of the dryer is key because what you just said is like, those capacity charts, if you say, okay, I want to hit what that capacity chart does, there's a lot of factors that don't allow the dryer, no matter what manufacturer it is, to get to that number. Well, with all these new hybrids that are coming out, some of them are harder to dry, some of them are easier to dry. That's something that, a lot of farmers don't want to hear, but it's just the truth. And, then there's, in harvest time, weather is volatile. Like if you get high humidity evenings where your capacity will drop in the evenings, well then shoot, in the morning, I'm, about 10 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden my capacity picks up by 300 bushels. And that's because the humidity goes down. And then in the evenings, the humidity comes up. So it's just, you want to size your dryer to the worst case scenario, right? Nobody wants to pick, 28% corn or 30% corn, but we do. And it's probably a smart thing to pick early. If you're taking 25% corn, well, that's where you should probably start, because that's why you have a dryer to get that done. But it's not you said, oh, I'm a grain dryer expert. There's no expert. It's
an art.
It's more of an art.
Yeah, it's not a science. I get that. I've ran the dryer in our system for quite a few years now, and like I was telling you earlier today, it feels it's, you can look at the chart. It can say, the dryer can say at 10 points of removal, it's going to kick out 1,500 bushel. One day it's 800.
Yep.
The next day it's 740, and the next day it's 1,400. Yep. It depends a little bit on, like you said, these external, temperature, the moisture of the corn, the hybrid. Is it a hard drying one, or is it an easy drying one, and those types of things. One of the other things I want to ask you about is, the grain quality coming out of the dryer from the moving parts. So tell me a little bit about, like, your system or systems, like the kind of back to the do's and don'ts. What do you, if a person's looking at a dryer, what do they want to make sure they do so that the quality of the grain, we're not cracking kernels, we're not busting stuff up with the emptying system out of the dryer.
And that's the thing that, at Grain Handler, what we are 100%, our main number one focus is grain quality. So we, when we first started building dryers, we had auger unloads. Okay. Well, then we realized, okay, augers are grinding corn, cause that screw's spinning as fast as it can go. And if you're drying, you're taking 10 points out, you're drying, you're metering out real low numbers into that
high speed auger. Yeah,
exactly. And it's grinding it up. Well, okay. Then we moved to 100% of dray conveyors. Well, then that was great. And then we decided to, probably 6 years ago, we went to a single drive system, which basically our system, the same motor runs the unload system and the conveyors at the same time. So the metering system and the unload. So if our dray conveyors are always 80% full, whether you're doing 500 bushels or 3,000 bushels an hour, it's always going to be the same amount of full, which that allows less grain damage in that aspect of it too. I mean, realistically, the most gentle way and the highest test weights is an in-bin drying system, but you can't get anything done. But, farms are getting bigger. People need to get stuff done. So they need to go to a continuous flow dryer. Well, in my opinion, obviously I'm partial, but the Grain Handler is second to none in that aspect. And then you combine that with, our partners with our moisture controller with Dryer Master. That is a great product that is pretty, unless a company is building their own moisture controller, everybody else uses Dryer Master for the most part. And they do a great job, and they're really good.
Yeah, they've been responsive whenever you got a question or you need something. And last year was my first year using it. I was the Dryer Master for years. Yeah. And I kind of like the automated thing, so I can sleep at night and not feel like I got to be mastering the dryer.
Yeah, and they have, the technology is all there. You can monitor stuff from your phone. You can change output rates and things like that. And it gives you, farming's a busy business. Especially during harvest. So you got to take a few things off your plate. It can free up stuff for other things.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of efficiency, I want to get your opinion on dumping hot versus dumping cool, because I know, like in your system and some of the other manufacturers, dumping hot is really not too much of an option, depending on where your burners are at and how the structure of the dryer is. To throw out my opinion, I've seen some struggles with dumping hot, in terms of grain. You talk about grain quality. The management seems like it's never done. Then, you're constantly trying to manage that. Talk a little bit about your guys' take on dumping hot versus dumping cool.
Well, we with all of our fan under models are all heat and cools. So, and that's kind of the direction I feel like the entire market has gone. There's a handful of old school guys that still do dump hot and, batch dry, and they're like, and that's works for them, but it's just a lot more management of moving corn, the steeping, and then you got to move it to a different bin and have the air on it and all that stuff. Where our dryer, when you are, it's going to come out about 20 degrees above ambient on a warm day. On a cooler day, because we cool with ambient air. If it's a cold day, it's going to come out a little bit less, but it can go right into your bin and put a little air on it if you need to. It's just like you said it the best. If there's just so much more management when you're dumping hot, because you don't know when that, if you're dumping hot at 17% and think you're going to take an extra, 2.5 points out in the bin, you will if you manage it right. But that's not the easiest thing to do.
Right. Well, and it seems too like even with the grain handler, when, and probably other manufacturers that are similar in that mode, like you said, you can be drying on an 80-degree day and it's coming out at 100 degrees. So you are dumping hot. I've noticed that, we might drop another 0.5 point. So if I'm shooting for 15 and I'm dumping, it's 100 degrees out, and the next couple of nights it cools down to 60 degrees. I kick the fan on and there's water raining out of the eaves. The next couple of mornings it's like, okay, I didn't dump hot, but I dumped hot, know, and so there is still some management to understanding.
And the thing of it is the bin, the new bins, all the bin sizes are so big and they put so much fan on them, which that is great because, it gives you a lot more.
Get the air.
You get the air moving pretty good, but there's management in everything. I think, but,
well, I just want to point that one out as a, kind of the do's and don'ts, just because you're not dumping hot, you still might be dumping kind of hot, right? Depending on
especially, environment. Like you guys start really early.
Yep.
And that's great, but you're going to have days that are in the mid 80s,
right,
or plus.
Yep.
And that's, that's the one thing with the, the cooling side of thing with cooling with ambient air, traditionally in the fall, right now, if you're picking early, like you said, you're going to start, next week or whatever, it's, that's not everybody, but it's also something that you have to adjust to.
Right.
So
I want to shift gears here as we kind of get closer to wrapping up, and I want to talk about cost. So as we record this in the fall of 2025, we're in mid-September, and the ag economy is not great right now. When we look at inflation on machinery and equipment, which is an area that I would say we're very schooled on. So we track cost of production on machinery. We don't as much on grain systems and dryers. So what I want to ask you is, what does the market look like on used dryers? So if a guy is thinking about, updating a dryer system and updating the dryer, how's the inflation been going in terms of the dryers, and then how is the used market for grain dryers?
Well, I think in general, just in my conversation with other reps, with other companies and things, the grain systems market is definitely down, and I think that has a lot to do with the
less than $4 corn.
Yeah, correct. That's probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
And then, there was a lot of grant programs that got put on hold that now are kind of getting back to being in, I'm not sure if they're going to be, obviously for this year, but the biggest thing that I've noticed with our dealer network is dealers could sell more dryers. It's just a matter of getting them in, getting, the job market for millwrights and for people that actually have to do all the work is really tough. That being said, I do think that, I'm always optimistic. With the markets and things like that. But if we're talking about, if people are, I forget what I'm kind of
just as far as like the value of the used dryers, are you able to move them?
Used dryers, if you can find them, as far as grain handler goes, I think the market is good. We take in any dryer, we refurbish.
And good as what are they? Are they holding their value
there? And they're holding their value, but obviously it's used. So, with a grain handler, it's a little different because our dryers last a lot longer than a lot of the screen dryers. You know, the steel just doesn't wear.
Right.
There's not a lot of wear moving parts.
There's no moving part, very few moving parts, and
the wear is limited. But you know, so we you know, it's technology. You know, like if we have an older dryer that someone trades in on a new dryer, we'll take it in and we'll put a new panel on it with the new technology, different, you know, updated, you know, with the updated VFD system, updated, you know, all the componentry and things like that. But it's definitely a good market. It's just, it's hard to find the right one. You know, we've had a couple of guys that bought we had a couple different customers this year that bought dryers used on like Facebook Marketplace or wherever, or an auction site or something like that. And they said, okay, I want this dryer. I have a 32-foot dryer. I'm going to buy a brand new tub, which would be all the moving parts, brand new, you know, 4-layer gas train, new burner, new panel, and then just utilize all the old tiers because the tiers don't wear. I mean, so and they basically, that saved them probably 40-50% on a new one by doing that route,
with the cost of steel and the manufacturing side of it. Yeah.
I mean, you don't, you know, you're utilizing, because that's the thing with our dryer, our tier sections haven't changed for the life of our dryer. So yeah, we have to upgrade some stuff. We've made some adjustments with to kind of stiffen it up and make it a little bit more, you know, when things, you know, 30 years ago, things are different. You know, you know, the R&D type stuff, we just were like, oh, this would work. But we're shoring up a lot of that stuff, which haven't been an issue, but it's just, you know, extra safety precautions and different ladders, cages, and all that kind of stuff that's required.
Well, a lot of that stuff's nice too, though. I mean, compared to the older systems, you know, their safety was not as much of a factor as it is now and that type of stuff. A question for you that I just thought of when you were kind of talking about the new tub or changing out. Is it worthwhile for a dryer owner, a producer that's got a system that's, you know, a dryer that's maybe got some age on it, but yet, like you said, the rest of the dryer's in good shape? Is that something that is worth considering just to basically rebuild the dryer, like you guys or a manufacturer come out and rebuild it, or are they better off to trade, or what?
I mean, well, that's obviously based on the situation. I mean, with a grain handler dryer, you can do a lot of that because it's all modular equipment. It's not, you know, we can easily change out, you know, a tub or, you know, put a new burner in or something like that, which I'm not 100% sure on any of the other manufacturers, how easy that is. Cause I know, like, if you have a tower dryer or a screen dryer or something like that, it's kind of
limited, probably.
It's limited because it can't be disassembled. A lot of the bigger ones can't be disassembled like they are, like ours. Like we could have your dryer down in 3 hours and then we could put a new one up in another 3 hours. So it's not as much of a difficult thing because everything's made in our shop. But whereas, you know,
and if money were no issue, money and time, I'd have you do that tomorrow. But you know, there's constraining variables here.
100%, 100%. I understand that for sure.
So I'm going to give you the last word here. What would you, if there's any words of wisdom from what you see, is there anything that farmers need to do better or different with their grain handling or their grain dryer system than what they do? I didn't forewarn you. I was going to ask that question, but is there anything there that you would say, you know, pay attention to this, you know, make sure you do this, or maybe this is something don't do?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just make sure everything is up to speed, and like you're doing the preseason, like you guys just did, to go and get the dryer ready to go before you fill it, before you do any of that stuff. And that's just things that you should do every year. And a lot of guys do, but a lot of guys don't. So you don't want to get the call, oh, I just, you know, filled my dryer full and now it won't light. I'm like, okay, well, I go down there and look at it and I'm like, okay, well, we need to get this part. Well, that part's a week out. Okay, well, I have a wet bin full of corn and my dryer's full of corn and I can't even unload the dryer. Like what, we have to get things going. So it's more testing the stuff, I think, is important. And then also being realistic about, like, you know, being a sales guy you know, rather than harvest, I'm a service guy somewhat in the harvest, but, you know, the biggest thing is like what you brought up earlier is the capacity charts. You got to really look at what you need to, and the nice thing about Grain Handler is all of our dryers are expandable. So we size your dryer to what you need. And then down the line, if you're not thinking you're getting the capacity based on the temperature you're drying at or the hybrid you're running through it, we can make that dryer a little bit bigger and then to get you to where you need to be. But it's the biggest thing is when you're looking at a dryer, just like anything else, oversize it because nothing's cheaper than it is today. And that's been true with the agricultural world.
Yeah. Inflation is real.
Inflation is real.
It continues to happen.
If you're looking to upgrade your drying system, there's no better time than, our winter programs come out in the, right after harvest. Right now we're running a huge promo on new dryers. And it's huge extra discounts before harvest for next year delivery. So, there's things out there. And, the nice thing about us being a family company, not a big, corporate company is we're able to do a lot of those things that allow us to be a little bit more piece by piece, like customer by customer, make it work for you and us. So we can all kind of, try to manage this time as we can. So,
yeah. Well, I can attest, and I guess that's my commercial for you, is I can attest that the grain handler system, your guys as a family and as a business, has been really good for us to work with. So we really appreciate that. If people want to look up grain handler, look up your system, what's the best way for people to reach out?
Our website is www.grainhandler.com.
Okay.
Come check it out. All of our, our equipment, our dryers obviously is our biggest showpiece, but we do make everything that moves grain, double run paddle conveyors, legs, conveyors,
awesome.
Curve up drags, all that kind of stuff. So, obviously I'm on the website, Matt Todd. I mean, you can find me as well if you
we'll call you. Usually answer the phone when I call. I always answer. That's
the key. That's the key. You got customer service, our big thing.
Right. So. Sounds good. Well, hey, Matt, thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening. If you got questions, reach out to these guys. They've been great for us to work with in our operation. With that said, we'll catch you again next time on the AgView Pitch.